With the Lions falling 38-35 on Sunday to the Eagles, there wasn't necessarily a lot of bright spots about our defense, but we found a few gems in the rough that we want to talk about. If you stick around to the end of the video, maybe chucking out some grades to 3 players that I think are deserving of a little bit of a highlight. Now, just like your mother when I'm around, let's talk about some D. Roll the intro.
Welcome to Detroit!
Welcome back to the channel, you guys. As you know, I'm your host, Hat and Beard. We're going to be diving into the Detroit Lions defense week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. But, before we get into the video, go ahead and click like and subscribe because it really helps me out. I appreciate that. Look, you guys, there's a few things that we need to talk about the defense. There isn't a whole hell of a lot of good that came out of the game. There were some bright spots, but an awful lot of negativity. And unfortunately, our style of defense, I've talked about this a lot, our hyper-aggressive get up the field and pursue with the front 7 style of defense isn't conducive to playing against mobile quarterbacks. We've seen it in week 1 against Atlanta in the preseason, then we've seen it week 1 against Philadelphia in the regular season. When our defense gets upfield 6-7 yards, a mobile quarterback's just going to slip out of the pocket. Or if you have a less mobile quarterback, they're just going to run delays and draws to the running backs. Our aggressive, pin your ears back, light your hair on fire, and just go get it, its Achilles heel now and all season will be mobile quarterbacks. We don't necessarily have a big interior line presence. I mean, yes, Aleem McNeil is good, but he just doesn't quite have all that you need. His whole package isn't complete. He's good at filling holes and plugging the gap, but his pressure, his speed isn't necessarily there. We need more of a mobile 3-shade, someone who can plug the holes and keep linebackers free to move around and make plays, but also someone who can maybe be a little bit more athletic. I kind of thought we would have that with Michael Brockers, but Michael Brockers isn't a spring chicken anymore, man. So if you noticed, our defense we were doing a lot of NASCAR packaging where we were bringing in rush edges and moving like Hutch and Kaminsky inside, and letting Harris and Austin Bryant roam the outside. So we were putting a lot of speed on the field, not a lot of power, which you would think would work out because a mobile quarterback's going to be faster. You want to be in pursuit, but you'd like to ideally not open up the lanes for that mobile quarterback to exploit and take advantage of. So that's going to be part of a problem, but luckily our back end of the defense was able to hold up in coverage fairly well. There was a couple of times where Jalen Hurts held the ball in the pocket for 6 seconds. That's an awful long time for a DB to be back covering a wide receiver. And I know A.J. Brown went nuts and had 140 some yards and 10 catches on 13 targets. But on the other side of that, Devonta Smith only had 4 targets for 0 catches. So we're going to talk about that. How is it Devonta Smith only had 4 targets for 0 catches? Because Jeff Okuda is starting to turn it around. I know his rookie season wasn't necessarily the best. He had a couple of nagging injuries. And last year he blew up his Achilles in the first game. So we can't really hold that against him. We can hold the fact that Jeff Okuda was taken number 3 overall, and when you were taken in that position, when you're taken in the top 10 of the first round, you're expected to contribute right away. That's why the bust tag has been hanging around Jeff Okuda for so long, because he's been unfortunately hurt. He hasn't had the stats to back up the number 3 overall selection. And the fact that we took him at number 3 further proves my point that all you Nimrods out there, they're like, oh, we gotta take Kyle Hamilton at 2. You gotta have an elite safety. No, we do have an elite safety. We have 2 very good safeties. We actually have 3 decent safeties in rotation. And that's not including Melifanu. I don't know if Melifanu can really develop because he came in the league as a corner. But you don't take a safety, you don't take a DB in the top 5 unless it's Charles Woodson, So Jeff Okuda has to come back and really show us. And so far in the preseason and in training camp, we were all getting kind of hyped about the reports that were coming out of training camp, but then once we finally got to see Jeff Okuda on film, what really sticks out to me was Jeff Okuda's performance week 3 against Pittsburgh, where he was glued to George Pickens' pocket the whole game. I mean, he was, not the whole game, but the whole time he was in there. And I know that the first few weeks we're going to have Jeff Okuda on a pitch count or a snap count or whatever you want to call it. We're limiting his exposure while we try and, bring him back up to game speed because he's missed so much time. But Jeff Okuda was second in the team in tackles. Jeff Okuda had 0 catches led up against him. He only had 4 targets at his wide receiver. In fact, if you watch the game, there were numerous times where Jalen Hurts looked Jeff Okuda's way and then immediately looked the other direction because Jeff Okuda had him locked down. I'm not saying Jeff Okuda's a lockdown corner yet, but he's on that path. If he continues to play this entire season the way that he played against Philadelphia, man, he could potentially really elevate his stock and finally, like a phoenix emerging, resurrect his career and live up to the expectations. Maybe live up to the expectation of the number 3 overall pick. Maybe get that tag of a lockdown corner. I'm not saying that a lockdown corner is the greatest thing to have. Look at Jalen Ramsey last week. Jalen Ramsey is one of the best corners in football, and he got burnt so bad that he was burnt toast. With all that being said, I'm very, very happy with Jeff Okuda's play. Now, on the other side, what was going on, Amani 2-4? Why were you letting up so many plays to A.J. Brown? I know that not all of it was your fault. I know that there was one play where Will Harris came in, and this is why Will Harris needs to go. Will Harris is a liability on the field. Will Harris couldn't cut it as a safety. Will Harris can't cut it as a nickelback. Will Harris is a special teams player. The very first target Will Harris had on him was like a 50-yard bomb to A.J. Brown, and he let it up because Will Harris just isn't a naturally gifted corner. He's an athlete, sure, but he came into the league as a safety, and now we're converting him over to corner, and I just don't think that play style necessarily suits his athleticism and his ability. So, Amani 2-4, Will Harris, what's going on over there? You know, our DBs will get a nice shot in the arm when Jerry Jacobs comes back in a few weeks off the PUP list. You know, that should hopefully elevate everybody else's play, but the long and short, Jeff Okuda, dude, you played great. Now, if everyone else could just ramp up and play and match his enthusiasm, we could maybe not let teams score 38 points on us and have to play catch-up all day. The second thing that's been driving me absolutely nuts after watching the game against Philadelphia was the thing that's been driving me nuts since week 1 of the preseason, and that's our over-aggressive defense, man. I know it sounds super weird to say. I'm only going to spend a little bit of time on it because I just keep pounding this. Our over-aggressive defense needs to tone it down against mobile quarterbacks because you can't have Jalen Hurts get 90 yards on the ground and 66 of them to come after contact. That means that your rush edges, your DNs, your defensive tackles, whoever you're sending on the house, is getting a hand on them as they just fly past the quarterback because they're coming in at 100 miles an hour. That's unacceptable. If you're going to get to the quarterback, you got to get to the quarterback. You got to get to him. You got to get more than just your hand on him as you're blowing by. You got to wrap up and you got to bring him down. I did like the pressure that I seen, and as I stated in a video earlier this week, you know, against a Carson Wentz, against a non-mobile quarterback, you know, if we were to play a Matty Ice or a Phil Rivers who's still in the league, or you know, like Drew Bledsoe, the human statue, you know, it would be very beneficial. But unfortunately, you know, I mean, we play the Bills. The Bills have Josh Allen. He's probably the best quarterback one of the best quarterbacks in the league and one of the better dual threat quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers still has a little bit of mobility. Luckily, we're in the North. Justin Fields isn't all that athletic. Kirk Cousins isn't all that athletic. Aaron Rodgers isn't what he once was, so it shouldn't hinder us too much in division. Just when we get outside and we play other teams that have mobile quarterbacks, then it's going to continuously bite us in the ass. And unfortunately, I don't know if Aaron Glenn is going to make that correction, because telling your defense to let off the gas is one of the few things you don't like to do in football. You like a hyper-aggressive defense. You don't necessarily want everyone standing back on their heels. Bend but don't break, Rod Marinelli. Bend but don't break. No. Go out there and get their ass. Get their ass. But if you're going to go out there and get their ass, you got to go out there and you got to get them when you get to them. You can't just like blow past them, Juju Hughes. You can't just blow past them, Hutch. I'm sorry, Hutch. You played okay, but, you know, let's be honest. As happy as I was that Jacksonville passed on Aiden Hutchinson and drafted Trayvon Walker, number 2 overall, Trayvon Walker looked a lot better. He had a sack and an interception. And the interception wasn't like the ball got tipped and fell into his arms. He made a very athletic play. I mean, Trayvon Walker reached back behind him like 27 yards to grab that pass and intercepts it. So that was pretty impressive. But like, Hutch will be there. All the tools are there. The athleticism's there. We just need to just fine tune, just make those very, very, very precise measurements and adjustments on this machine, and our defense will be a much more productive and much more efficient unit on the whole. Again, we're missing some DBs. Tracy Walker got kicked out of the game for, you know, throwing a punch, which we can't have that. Our defense needs to get there. It's just we're not there yet. So the first few weeks are probably going to be like this, and a lot of track meets, unfortunately. The final highlight, or really, you could say it's a low light, kind of a tip of the hat and a wag of the finger, was at Tracy Walker. We re-signed Tracy Walker to a $30 million extension, and it's evident in his swag. I mean, he's out there looking just fly compared to everybody else. But Tracy Walker also earned the captain spot, right? He's a captain of our team. He is a leader. Everyone looks to you, man. Not only are you the moral leader of the team, but you're also the defensive captain in that your position at safety, you make the majority of the calls coming out of our defense. The majority of our adjustments on the field come out of the safety box. So for you to lead the team in tackles was awesome, although I don't like our DBs leading the teams in tackles because that means that, again, a lot of yards after contact, a lot of just like blowing past your man, blowing assignments. But Tracy Walker, not only was he leading the team in tackles before he got kicked out, but he led the team in tackles after he got kicked out. So he was flying all over the field. I was really happy with Tracy Walker's play right up until he got kicked out of the game. Unfortunately, that was a big low light, man. So I'm going to say Tracy Walker came out of here. I'm going to say a net neutral, although ultimately I think it was a loss because when Tracy Walker was kicked out of the game, our defense is so position specific that you couldn't move Kirby Joseph over to fill his role because he plays his role as the strong safety. And with Ifedu Malafanu being out on the PUP list, still recovering from last year, that meant that Juju Hughes had to come in and play. And Juju Hughes, bless his heart, the dude was out there playing as best he could, but there was a play in the fourth quarter where AG sent the house on a third down and Juju Hughes blew right past Jalen Hurts. I mean, he had a sack lined up and he just couldn't slam on the brakes fast enough and just break down and open up and tackle the guy, and Hurts blew right past him for first down. And I'm not saying that's what sealed the deal, but that was on the final drive that kind of sealed the deal. And I know ifs and buts were candies and nuts, then we'd all have a happy Halloween. But I honestly think that Tracy Walker would have been able to break down. He's a little bit more of a pro. He's been in the league a little bit longer. He's smarter. He earned that extension, and I think he wants the stats, man. I think Tracy Walker has something to prove. I said in an earlier video that Tracy Walker could be an elite corner in this league, or an elite safety. Maybe, maybe not. I would like to think that he has that potential because that means that our defense will be better, and I'm drinking way too much Lions Kool-Aid. But if Tracy Walker would have been in the game during that fourth quarter, he probably would have broke down. He would have made the play on Hurts. The Eagles would have been forced to punt, and we could have driven to at least push for an overtime. Instead, you've seen what happened. Hurts scrambles, and then I think 2 plays later, Miles Sanders rips off a huge run, and then they just burn up the clock, and our hyper-aggressive defense let that Achilles heel just blow up on them all day long, and unfortunately that led to 38 points. Now, I know not 38 points is all his fault. Jared Goff threw a pick 6, and really it's not fair to count offensive turnovers for touchdowns against the defense, but that's the way that it is. If that wouldn't happen, hey, we'd have come out 35-31 potentially. Or we never would have been as aggressive and go after it on offense and defense and tried to play catch-up. Who knows? These are all ifs and buts or candies and nuts. We'd all have a happy Easter. But hey, man, it is what it is. Tracy Walker, I think he knows that he messed up. I expect him to not play like, hostile, not to let his emotions get the better of him. In fact, if I'm being honest, I really think that the narrative around Tracy Walker means that against the commies, he's going to have several big plays. I think we'll see some big hits, some nice licks out of Tracy Walker, but I'm also expecting a takeaway out of Tracy Walker to kind of make up for, because again, he's the captain. He's a $30 million man. He was a big piece that we re-signed to bring back a hangover from the Quintricia era that clearly Dan Campbell and company like playing with. They have a repertoire with him. They know how to coach him up. He knows and understands our defense. So he's a good piece to have. And I think, like I said, narratively, he's just going to have to make a huge play to really show the team that, hey, man, I'm that dude. In closing, we're going to throw out a couple of things that I really like. 3 real quick things. Number 1, Jeff Okuda was a lockdown corner. For as best of a lockdown corner as Jeff Okuda can lock down at the corner spot. I'm not giving him an A+ grade, but I will say that he made enough plays, and I didn't hear his name being called other than when he was making tackles. No blown coverages, none of that nonsense. 0 catches, 4 targets, no catches. Jeff Okuda gets a solid B to B+ grade on the day.
Wait a minute now there, friend. You weren't about to click off this video without liking and subscribing, were you? Come on, man. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy, dude. Just hit like and subscribe.
Second, let's talk about our number 2 overall pick, the pride of Detroit, the Michigan man himself, Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson, no sacks, but his presence was felt on the defense because this is what I was kind of talking about earlier on in the preseason. Aiden Hutchinson might not jump out on the stat sheet every single game, but Aiden Hutchinson's presence will be felt by other players jumping out on the stat sheet. Does that make sense? You're so hyper-focused on Hutch and what he can do that Charles Harris will be able to get around the edge, that Austin Bryant, who's had a massive offseason and a big training camp, Austin Bryant looked great in week 1. He'll be able to get to player. John Kaminsky, who knew that John Kaminsky was even a viable pass rusher? Well, he is when you have the Aiden Hutchinson effect. Also, John Kaminsky is big and athletic. I actually really like John Kaminsky. I think he was a sneaky little addition who's going to contribute to our defense. But Aiden Hutchinson, no sacks, a lot of pressure, but I was hoping he'd come out and get a sack his rookie game. No passes swatted away, no real. You didn't hear a lot about Aiden Hutchinson. He wasn't making a lot of splash plays. So, look, you Michigan fans are going to hate it, and you Lions hardcore fans are going to hate it. But I'm just being real. Aiden Hutchinson is great on the day, a C-. While we're on the topic of defensive rookies, let's talk about the fan favorite, our gem, our diamond in the rough, the man that we stole away in the 6th round who's supposed to contribute on special teams only, and in week 1 came out as a starter on defense, not because of injuries, but because the man earned it. And that's Malcolm Rodriguez. Rodrigo looked great. Rodrigo was making tackles. Rodrigo was standing his men up. Rodrigo was hip checking Jason Kelsey. Rodrigo was plugging holes. Rodrigo only let up 4 catches for 27 yards in his zone coverage, which, considering, again, he's not known for his coverage, he's known for his big hits, his tackling, and was supposed to be a contributing member on special teams. That's an amazing statistic to come out of a 6th round pick. I think Malcolm Rodriguez is a superstar in development. We're going to know Malcolm Rodriguez's name come probably the middle of the season, if not the end of the year, and expect him to potentially push if he makes enough plays. If Malcolm Rodriguez plays enough plays, he could outplay Aiden Hutchinson and make a push for Defensive Rookie of the Year. All right, so that's going to do it for me, guys. I know this was kind of a rambling video, but again, it was hard with our defense giving up almost 40 points. There wasn't a lot to go off of. Our stat sheet, nothing really jumped out other than the few things that I highlighted. But if you got anything you want to discuss, anything you noticed, go ahead and drop a comment down below. I love having a little bit of a dialogue with people. Y'all been kind of light on the comments, so let's try and get some comments up. Go ahead and hit like on your way out the door, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. And I've been Hat and Beard. You've been an attentive audience. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you in the next one.
Ever notice how you come across somebody once in a while that you shouldn't have fucked with? That's me.